Hi, folks. It's Chris Dagger right here from Off Bishop Street 2.0 for yet another podcast session just for you guys. That's how generous I am, and I keep generating these podcast sessions on the Off Bishop Street YouTube channel as well. So, Parush, Bamrah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, Parush Bamrah was a competitor at the 3MT thesis competition, the 3-minute thesis competition, in the master's category. And congrats on winning runner-up this
Thank you
year,
so much.
right? So I was also a competitor, and I unfortunately did not win, but you win some, you lose some, that kind of thing. So, how does it feel to come off such a remarkable victory? Let's say, just to start things off.
Like more than the victory, I would talk about the learning experience it was. So I feel that it was super amazing to get to know about other people's research and I would say compete with competitors like you. So it was definitely a very valuable experience.
Right.
And from the winning aspect, I feel that uh, the achievement, I would say basically to me, is that I was able to explain my research and the work I do, the work I love, to a very general audience in simple words. So
Right.
I'm happy that it came across, and yeah.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there because it's not so much about winning a competition. Even the judges and the coaches told us it's not really about
Exactly.
striving towards a win per se, but it's just the experience of distilling all that information, like all that jargon, all those technical terms, into a layman's presentation for people to understand, for the mass audience. I think that in and of itself, being able to do that and perform in that art form is a victory in and of itself.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like I mean, we're talking about 3MT. I think that's what really excited me the most in inviting you over to the show. Despite that, initially this was at its root a theology podcast, but my ambition was really to stretch out and to give the audience different flavors to dip in different fields and investigate other fields. So you're in mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us more about like the thesis research that you're doing. Like, what exactly is behind that 3MT that you performed at, and like what is your main focus on researching?
Okay. So as you said, I'm doing my research in mechanical engineering, but my specialization is aerospace, and in that, I specialize in aircraft system safety analysis. So, as you might know, in aircraft, we have different systems. So, the hidden complexity behind the tube and wing configuration are the systems which actually make it fly. So, we have the fuel system, for example, the hydraulics, the other avionics components, and the propulsion system. So there are a lot of systems, and they interact with each other to make it fly. So, but this interaction, it can be very tricky because there are some intrinsic hazards posed by the different components. For example, if I take up a simple example, which I also talked about during my 3MT, was the wires in the fuel tank,
Right.
and there was a short circuit which led to a fuel tank burst, and the flight exploded.
Yeah, I mean, you got to tell us more about that flight. Like, what was the story behind that?
Yeah, so it was a flight which was going from New York to Paris, I suppose, and just few minutes after takeoff, because of the rubbing of the wires, because it was an installation problem here, I would like to emphasize again. So, because of the rubbing, the coating which is there to protect the wires, like the insulation, so it gets damaged and the wires come in contact and it leads to short circuit. Since it is in a fuel tank environment, so it's inflammable, the fuel, and it leads to a I would say an ignition source. It acts as an ignition source, leads to the ignition, and this leads to the burst of a fuel tank, and the I would say the fragments or uh, these the flammable sources, they spread out and they lead to the burst of the other fuel tanks which are adjacent, and as a whole the aircraft explodes.
Wow, I mean, just that cascade of different reactions really,
Cascade, exactly.
It shocks me in the fact that, and it might shock a lot of the viewers here because the fact that a lot of people do travel. I think, I was. I'll give you an anecdote. Like one time, I got interviewed for a sales position for like medical equipment or orthopedic equipment, and the um, the interviewer, one of the interviewers, actually decided to ask me a totally random question, and they asked me, okay, well, Christopher, how many airplanes do you think are in the air right now? I think I answered something like, just off the top of my head, 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. Like, and the thing is, like, people can actually Google it online. You might know this because you're specializing in aircraft and aircraft systems. Um, the fact that there are so many airplanes in the air,
Exactly.
and that these hazards actually do happen because errors are human.
Mm-hmm.
It should it be like a reason for concern for a lot of people that actually are going to be traveling this summer, and summer's right around the corner.
No, I feel that the aircraft are pretty safe, and because we have, that's why we do all this analysis. It's just that they have been, like people have been doing this to make the airplanes safe. And in fact, I would like to reassure the viewers by saying that the air travel is the safest mode of travel.
Right. It says it's
So
safer than cars, right?
exactly, exactly. Like we have the failure rate of 10 raised to the power minus 9, so they are pretty safe. So please go for your vacation without any worry, because we are here.
Yeah, she's
So
not here to discourage you guys with these stories. It's just that
yeah,
shit happens sometimes. Like, and
exactly. Like there are some, as you said, because of human error. So there was one of the flights. I don't remember the exact time, but yeah, it was somewhere around, I would say, late 90s. And so what happened is that there was some repair going on, and the maintenance goes like the maintenance checks are done after the repair of the aircraft. So what happened was that the person, the in charge, they have to like check everything and check whether they have switched on or switched off certain buttons after the repair. Like they have to depressurize the aircraft and then repressurize it. So that's all being done, and then the in charge has to tick on some sheets of paper during that time,
right.
if at all. So the person accidentally forgot to switch on the pressurization switch, I would say here, to just keep it simple. And then he went, but he ticked that yeah, he did it. So this led to like in-flight depressurization when the flight took off with passengers. It was I remember the flight name, like the Helios, and so like, and in flight there was a depressurization. Everybody on the flight died because of lack of oxygen, and then like the flight was just ghosted in the air.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Like it just
and
went off the
yeah, like it was
radar,
just flying.
disappeared.
It was just now, since we have this autopilot, and suppose when before landing it, if there's no command, so it just does a go around. So it was just flying above the city. I don't remember, somewhere in Greece, I think.
In Greece.
So yeah, so it was just going rounds, and then the people, the city thought that it's some hijack or something which had happened. So they sent some military jets to check, and they said that they cannot find anybody on the plane. Like they cannot see anything. Like there's nobody inside. Everybody has their heads down, and the
Oh, okay.
oxygen masks are down. But like the oxygen mask, like they can only support, I guess, for 20 minutes,
Right.
and within that you have to land. So, but the pilot themselves, they were alive, because so the flight was just ghosted just because of that one small error.
My goodness. And like, okay, so the pilots died.
Yeah.
But the plane was going round and around in the
Yeah.
air. Okay, that's interesting. I would think like
because there's no oxygen.
right.
So
That's extremely weird.
but
Like,
that's very scary also.
it is super scary. It does scare me a lot. But like I would be thinking if the pilots die, then nobody's controlling the plane. I would be thinking that the plane would like just dip and crash somewhere. But no, it's like spinning around.
Yeah, until the fuel is there to sustain the flight.
That's amazingly scary. And then, but that's not the same. Okay, so that's a different
That's a
scenario.
different error.
Yeah, because
like
you mentioned
this
Greece.
is about the human error.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting. And like what goes on between the actual well, right before taking the actual criterion, like what goes on before, in between the readiness of the plane and taking, like isn't there like a mechanism or a flowchart that the inspector has to go through before?
Like they do have to go to a flowchart.
Yeah.
But then it could be that that the person, like he's a human, right?
Right.
And there's like, if he has to do a lot of things and he's daily doing the same manual work, so sometimes it's just that you are so used to that routine that you might think that, oh, I've done this, and you do the check mark.
So kind of like in a nonchalant way, he would just tick the box and just
Exactly.
forget about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that's I would say a very rare thing again, because they have been trained to do this, and there are some cycles where they're like the employees cycle and they do this, and but yeah, like some unfortunate things happen, like that accident, I would say, and but if this was for a fully built plane which is there in the market, and like it has had several flights before, and there's some overhaul going on and then maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
so it's that aspect. But if we talk about the design aspect, so the checking is very rigorous. Like it's not like we'll just let a plane go. Like to build a plane, it takes approximately 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, okay.
10 to 20 years. It depends. Like if you're starting from scratch, it can take longer. But since I would say the conventional design, the so-called conventional design, in which we have a fuselage and the wings and the tail, so that's like the companies have been building it for years, so they know what are the particular sources of error,
Right.
or what could lead to a very catastrophic accident, because they have the investigation reports which found some things, and they have to make sure that they don't repeat those same mistakes, those installation errors, which can lead to catastrophic accidents or disasters, I would say. So when they have that template, they can make some changes and produce a new design. But if we are moving to the crazy designs like I showed in the 3MP, like the blended wing body,
Yeah, like that cute little triangular airplane.
yeah,
Yeah,
the saucepan shape. So in that that thing doesn't work. Like we don't know what could happen on this plane. So here's where my research comes in, because we need to make the testing and all more rigorous.
But that kind of bummed me out though, because when I saw your slide with that triangle, I think you changed the slide afterwards. Um, that little triangular shaped plane was, it looked like a private jet that I would like to own and fly around with, like just like in those small fighter jets.
Yeah.
And it's too bad that it's not flyable or too dangerous to fly, or like as a hazard. But is it the shape in and of itself, or what exactly about that plane makes it like it's really a triangular type of you know arrow's head shaped type of plane? But what makes it dangerous in and of itself?
Um, like the thing is, the thing that makes it dangerous is that we don't know how dangerous it can be.
Okay.
So you see, like from aerodynamics point of view, I would say, like if you want to save fuel and make it super efficient and all, it's perfect design.
Mm-hmm.
But if before we bring it to use, say for the public in general, for the commercial use, if we want to use that particular plane, then we must know what are the associated like risks of flying it.
Right.
For example, the engine placement, if you see, it is maybe you could put a picture in the video later.
Yeah, we should.
So the engines are placed at the in the aft region, and they are on the top of the fuselage. So
right.
what happens is that if we have a uncontained engine rotor failure, if we call in technical terms, or basically if a fragment of the um, engine fan which is rotating, it just there's a crack or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it just releases. So it is like in physics we make an assumption that it has infinite energy and it can pierce through anything. And if we have, say, fuel tanks just near to the engine, because we want to pass the fuel to the engine without having a very long connection and all that, so then it might pierce that.
Okay.
And like it can lead to a burst, right?
Yeah, which is what I think happened in New York, was it, or
No, it was the Byron.
Okay, yeah, that was sorry, that was right. Not
So what I'm trying to emphasize is that we must know where can we put our fuel tanks, and where do we place the passengers, so that it doesn't, like the rotor burst, that zone, that's the danger zone. So the passengers should not be seated in that zone.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something which I do, because for the normal airplanes, we have the wing, we have the engine. So the wings are swept. That's for aerodynamic reasons. But while placing the engines, they make sure that that particular zone at which they have the high probability of the blades releasing, and they have the trajectory. Okay, it would go in this way.
Right.
So they make sure that nothing is in the way of that danger zone. And for the passengers, they have special shielding on the fuselage where there's a high probability of hitting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm guessing that engineers are now working on these different
Yeah.
designs to basically craft these new airplanes in a way that's more secure. And so they're basically, if I understand well, you can correct me on that. So they're changing the fuel tank location so that it's further away from the passengers, so that if something happens, or like actually we don't want
Yeah.
anything to happen. Actually, it shouldn't happen.
Yes.
But to keep that hazard from just a safety point of view or a good conscience point of view, keep it like far away from where the passengers may be located on the craft.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that's an example, but there are many other things. So like the actuators which move the control surfaces. The control surfaces are used to like direct our flight, like give direction, like whether we are say heading towards the left, so we need to deflect some surfaces. So if the actuator, well, like the thing which is powering that surface to move,
Right.
if that is damaged, then we cannot move.
Okay.
So we need, like there are many other systems. So fuel tank is an example. Like the placement of different systems, it depends on such particular risk. Like one of them is like the engine burst. There are many others similar to that.
Has there been any like precedents to actuator failure in the past? You know, in other scenarios, like from the history, like in the literature of like what aircraft safety has to be like is like well, when it comes to the actuator, is there something that has happened in the past that maybe
Yeah,
alarming?
like so we designed the aircraft to be safe in this again. Like
Right.
we have many redundant systems. So even if say one actuator is down, we have a redundant actuator besides it. So that's like we try to design it as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But since you are asking about an example or an incident, so one incident comes to my mind. It was a flight. I wouldn't name the company. Okay, so
We'll keep that confidential.
yeah.
So.
So like a flight, that particular airplane has 4 hydraulic systems.
Right.
So we have the one which is the principal one, and there are 3 different redundancies.
Mm-hmm.
So you see now, if one fails, we have the other. If one fails, we have the other. So we have a complete backup. But what happened is, now I'm coming to installation again. So we have a bulkhead, like it's I would say a wall
Mm-hmm.
in the aft region of the fuselage.
Okay.
So we have the fuselage from the nose till the aft pressure bulkhead.
Right.
So it's all pressurized. And besides that, we have the tail cone, which is unpressurized and which has the systems and the APU, auxiliary power unit, like if the engine is not working, so it can give some power.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then we have the reservoirs of different systems, like the hydraulic system. So the actuators are powered by the hydraulics, and we have 4 of them in backup. I said, so we have their reservoirs placed in the back. So what happened is that there was some repair again.
Again. Okay.
Again. So, but the thing was not done properly, and in flight it again there was a damage to it, and it was damaged, and there were some issues. But despite that, the flight, we have, like, the engineers designed it like as per the certification requirements. It has to be designed that it still lands safely. So it could have landed safely because it was designed for it. But the problem was that these systems, the backup systems, were placed so close that if one damages, the other adjacent to it also damages, and the adjacent one also damages. So like it's again a cascading. So it's just that if they would have thought about it, that if there is a damage to one of the reservoirs because the aft pressure bulkhead, it burst and it hit one of them, so that failure should not affect the other system. So that's why we must place them separately and have, like, the physical space should be independent.
Right.
So that's one of the incidents which happened, and yeah, and unfortunately everybody died.
Oh crap! Yeah, it's a lot of deaths going on here, but I think yeah, it's. I mean, there's not enough emphasis that we can put on like just the level of safety that's required and the complexity that comes with the engineering design behind all that safety. And um, now I'm just curious to know, like, during your undergrad years, like, was aircraft technology and specifically that particular vein of engineering, was that something that of interest to you back then, or was it something that you discovered during graduate studies?
Um, yes, I would say that it's something which I discovered during my graduate studies
Right.
because during my undergrad I did it in aeronautical engineering as well,
Mm-hmm.
but it's I guess more of a formation where you get to learn about different subjects and yeah, like how do you solve different problems and how they have been solved. But when you come to graduate studies, you get to know about problems which require solution and which require more than what you have studied already. So yeah, and like I came across this system safety during my uh, graduate studies, and that's the lead motif of my thesis as well. So yeah, it's very interesting because safety is paramount in aerospace.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so it's very interesting. And since this discipline, like it's interdisciplinary, I would say we have to interact with the structures team, with the aerodynamics, because the shape they want to keep it as sleek as possible, but then we have to place those redundancies, we need space.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there are many different disciplines which come together and we ensure that the plane is safe.
Well, what would be like the main discipline at the core of it all? Like when you look at all these different disciplines coming together, what would be like one standout discipline for someone who's, perhaps envisioning engineering or who is an engineer right now? Like, what would that the discipline be? Basically?
Like discipline as in out of the many disciplines which interact,
Yeah.
I would say that like there's no one prominent one because like all the teams they must interact.
Yeah.
Like be it the weights team, the stability, the controls, and the aerodynamics, the structure. So until and unless they interact with each other, like it's like we cannot have a flying plane which
Right.
is safe. So I would say that there's no one main principle which like leads everybody. It's very interdependent.
And I mean that's why it takes like 20 plus years to build a
Yeah.
whole aircraft. And like before this interview right now with you, like I didn't even know that it takes that long
Yeah.
to build an airplane. I thought it would take, I don't know, like maybe 5 years or something like that, or just perhaps the same amount of years as it takes for a car. I don't know how long it takes to build a car, but obviously an airplane is more complex, and just like the whole all the systems in place and all these different teams coming together and building something that is safe and reliable. I think in and of itself it's quite impressive. But then I'd be thinking, like, how can we have that many airplanes in the sky flying around? Like, how can I, as a tourist, when we look at it from the layman's perspective, book a flight so easily for tomorrow morning to fly wherever I want in the world if it takes that much time to design an airplane? So I think I'm kind of stepping outside of the engineering part and more in the perhaps the real life thinking part to understand, like, okay, well, in terms of production now, like how does the turnover happen? How does the production happen so that to satisfy a certain need, because it takes 20 years?
I see. I understand your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that it's not that each and every plane which you see in the sky will take 20 years to build. Is that for example, if I say Airbus A320, so that plane, like, okay, maybe I should not take names. So for example, an X model of plane,
Sure.
it might take say 10 years or 10 to 15 years to build. So now to design from scratch, like you have the conceptual design, the preliminary, and then the detailed design. So you design a plane, and so it's ready. It's certified to fly. It's ready. Now you have so many planes which are basically I would say in a layman's language, the photocopy of the same plane.
Right.
So you have the design ready. Now it's just the manufacturing. So it's just a cookie cutter process where you build different like hundreds of planes of the same design.
Like it was rinse and repeat, basically repeating the process.
Yeah. And then the company will launch, say, a new plane, but it's more or less the same design. Essentially, it's the same. They'll just increase the say the length or the wingspan. So it's just like modifying the same design and then certifying it, because yeah, the weight category might change, or the size, the number of seats will increase. So then it becomes easier. So the process which might have taken 20 years can take 10 years. But I would say that at least 10.
So yeah, so
So, or 10 plus. So, but now with, yeah, because like you have different planes, for example, Boeing 747, 767, 777, 787. They're not completely redesigning it, they're just making few changes so that we get a new model. And then, like, the change in the technology, or for example, the 787, it has more electric systems.
mm-hmm.
They are not just relying on hydraulics, so they have experimented with more electrical systems, the actuation systems, try to electrify it. So yeah, so it's not that each plane which is there in the sky would take 20 years. It's just that the design of a particular model will take some years, and then again it's the cookie cutter process,
Right.
where they'll be next set 200 planes with the same design.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of origins and to understand like how the first, let's say we're talking about airplanes, how the very first airplanes were designed and how we got here just by the developmental process and seeing how it evolved. And it's very interesting for me to have you here because I just thought about something in my mind. My mother, who's an insurance agent, actually went to Air Canada's head office, right? And they were introducing her to different models of airplanes from how they were designed in the 1980s, the 1990s, early 2000s, and now, and even before that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought about it because my mom actually went there, and they have like the airplane museum at Air Canada. I don't know where it is, but it'd be interesting. And it's off limits. Like a lot of people are not allowed to go there, and my mom, because she was on a business trip, actually had to go there. So and now when I look at like how we invented airplanes, I think it was I remember the name of the brothers.
The Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers.
Yeah.
The Wright brothers. Yeah, and they invented this whole concept. So people have been flying for barely. I'm not sure about the history of the dates here, but I think 100 years.
Yeah.
So from then until now, and the tourism industry, immigration, all that kind of thing, I kind of interrelate like everything together. Like if it weren't for aircrafts and designing aircrafts, like we wouldn't have um, like immigration wouldn't be as a mainstream thing as it is today.
Yeah.
And the same goes for like tourism, the whole tourism industry. And the fact that you have a museum that's built for tourists for people to fly from one place to the next to visit that museum because they know that aircrafts serve as a conduit to bring people around. Like it's fascinating, and I think it's very relevant to see like how designing aircrafts is not only important for the sake of building airplanes, but also for all these different purposes. So yeah, I was just wondering, like, when we look at the origins of airplanes up until now, is it something that you looked at, like how airplanes were designed back then and how during the century how it kind of developed?
Yes. So initially, like if you see the Wright brothers, if you see their Wright Flyer, which they call, so it was the first controllable plane. But it's not that everything started from there. Before as well, like people tried to fly, they like literally put on wings and they jumped off like they say a building and then they tried to fly.
I mean, I'd like to do that if there's like if you can market and patent like a Walmart plastic plain man suit, like I would definitely buy it. So it seems like a lot of fun.
So yeah. So like we have gliders, so there had been attempts.
Right.
Like you must have, I don't know, like it's more like an helicopter, like the Da Vinci's. There's a
Da Vinci
machine.
actually did something, right? Yeah.
So like there have been many people who have tried to fly, like the Montmorency, the balloon, so hot air balloon. So like people have been fascinated with flight, like since a long time.
Right.
So it was the Wright brothers who made the first controllable flight. So they have like the first flight was roughly I guess 10 minutes or less, I'm not sure. So but then since then if I talk about the current airplanes, so initially if you think that they were not flying higher, and like they were not pressurized because of that. Like we must have seen the box shaped fuselage.
Box shaped.
Like these curved edges of a square or rectangle.
Okay, actually, let's look it up right away. Actually, so what's it called?
Like you can just search for an old plane. Like even if you search for a Cessna, which still flies, it's not pressurized.
Cessna plane. Let's take a look, and we'll show the viewers right away. Oh, no internet. Let me just. So I always have to connect to the internet. Connect automatically. So it says. So it's basically a box shaped.
Yeah, so it's like a box shape. You have a seat, and then you have like two wings biplane. Like that comes to my mind.
Right.
And it's the controls are manual, so the pilot has to actually pull the things so that the thing, like there are linkages, control linkages, so the control surfaces they tilt, and so that the plane can fly.
Right.
So it was the pilot's energy which was being used.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So they really had to yank it really hard.
Exactly.
And...
So, and it was designed how that load would transfer and everything. And since then, like since these changes and the developments going on in other domains as well, we moved to hydraulics and then pneumatics, and now we are looking at the electrical, the fly-by-wire. So
And that the fly by wire is that's the most recent.
yeah, like it's not fully developed.
Right.
Right. So for military purposes, yeah, there have been like full fly-by-wire, but for the commercial aspect, again, like it requires a lot of safety considerations to be taken into account. Though it's never like complete fly-by-wire. You'll have a hydraulic redundancy,
right,
and all that. So yeah, but like that's what we are looking into the future, because it will be very light, because we have this wires to control it. The electrical signal from the flight control computer is passing, and then the control surface is actuated. So these are something which we would say envision for the upcoming planes to be completely electric. So yeah, and then there's also a new concept which is fly by air.
Fly by air, yeah, that's
yeah. So like you pass the signals, like we have Wi-Fi.
Right.
So you pass those signals without anything, without any physical interface, so that the surface gets actuated. For example. So, but that's very far.
That's for further development. So when you talked about the plane being lighter, do I understand that it's the weight is going to be like they're going to decrease the weight of the actual plane? How do they actually weigh the plane, or do they weigh different parts and see like in the sum total, or to see like, because for something to fly in the air and that's so huge and so heavy, like it's impressive to see the laws of physics making sure that actual vehicle or flying vehicle stays in the air like that.
Yeah. So, like if you talk about the actual weighing of everything, so yeah, we do have the, like for example, when you have the payload and all, there is I would say a weighing machine for example, for the planes. Like they are still there, okay, because you have the payload and all, so you have to check all the calculations before you take flight. And like in actual, like from the design when we start, we like we keep that in mind, because if we are say planning to lift this much, then we must know that our wings, they should have a particular span, so that they can generate enough lift to lift that way. So it's like, since the design, we have a plan that we want to take this much into the air, and then we design it for that. And there are some say reservations made. So for example, we begin with some empirical calculations. Okay, this weight is allocated to say structures, this weight is allocated to systems, and so we must make sure that we don't exceed the weight limits, and if we do, then how we could like compensate for that.
Interesting. Yeah, that's it. And I mean, you were mentioning the box-shaped Cessnas. I'm not sure if I'm at the right place here. I'm gonna actually, because I can actually contort.
Yeah, so you see, like it's the shape of the fuselage. It's not the circular shape which you see.
Right, not the actual cylindric or tubular
like this is
shape that we have.
This is not the old one, but they are like, it's an example how the plane, like this is an unpressurized plane. So
I'm trying to widen up the image. So this would be like the I'm gonna widescreen.
Like the easy peasy plane.
The easy peasy plane. Or the White's brother. I'm thinking the Wright brothers. They worked on this kind of plane initially, right?
Yeah, like it was basically a structure, I would say, the thrust and frame and all that.
Yeah.
So
I'm just gonna show like the audience. So this is basically like your good old fashioned Um,
The simple design.
it looks like a massive fish, fish shaped plane with square wings. That's these are the old ugly planes. But they still fly
Yeah, they
these
still
stuff.
fly.
That's what's impressive.
Yeah,
I think for like private owners, mostly, or
yeah.
uh,
Like if you're if you're a flying fan and if you want to fly, so you can.
how much do those cost? Actually, if I want to buy, I'm just
I'm not sure
wondering,
about the
like
cost.
the what?
I'm not sure about the cost,
Yeah.
but yeah, but you can hire them. You can go to flying school and practice it. And if you want to buy, I think you can check
Well, I mean, I definitely do not have the money to buy that thing, but I mean, just to have that freedom of going in the air and flying around and just
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. I think that's why they're still around because a lot of people can afford to fly in those types of
Yes.
aircrafts, and as long as the technology keeps up with it not being obsolete, right? I think that's the main thing. I'm just we're talking about the different controversies or incidents that happen. Like I'm at this level right here in the it's Wikipedia obviously, but like it seems to me that there's another controversy right here when it says Chinese production controversy on November 7th, 2007. Cessna announced that then new Cessna 162 would be built in People's Republic of China by Shenyang Aircraft Corporation, which is a subsidiary of China Aviation Industry Corporation, a Chinese government owned consortium of aircraft manufacturers. Cessna reported that the decision was made to save money and also that the company had no more plant capacity in the United States at the time. Cessna received much negative feedback for this decision, with complaints centering on the recent quality problems with Chinese production of other consumer products. China's human rights record, exporting of jobs, and China's less than friendly political relationships with the United States, with the United States, sorry. The customer backlash surprised Cessna and resulted in a company public relations campaign in early 2009. So I'm just wondering here, like, what the default was, because anyway, it seemed that even in production, sometimes like um, when if plant capacity is not used in a proper way, I think sometimes like it can not only for labor issues but like for aircraft production it can cause different controversies. So it seems to be like it seems that your industry is quite the hot hub for different stories here. Anyway, yeah. So we're talking about like and now like yeah they're having their tubular shapes, and like we were talking about weight and the fact that people are flying light,
Yeah.
right? So is that the future for the aircraft industry, or like are all aircrafts going to end up like in 10 years from now? Like if we try to look forward,
Hmm.
are all airplanes going to be flying light, basically?
Yeah, like we already have the planes. Like it's not about making the planes like lighter, but we try to make them lighter. It's because we want to save the fuel
Right.
because like the resources are not there forever, right? So this is one reason why we are trying to make them more fuel efficient this way by
Mm-hmm.
making them lighter. And besides like reducing the weight, there are other measures like you have the like I don't know if you have noticed the wing tips which are like pointed
Yeah,
upwards.
yeah, there's that.
Yeah, so they are known as winglets.
Okay.
So they help us like reduce the loss of lift, and therefore like we, this translates to fuel savings and the weight savings as well. So like there are many other design measures which are
That
being used.
that's super interesting because I thought that it was more of an aesthetic thing than an actual.
You know,
Like I think everything in that case has a purpose because yeah, I noticed that wings would be like, they would have like basically like just a sort of inflected edge on the top of the wingspan, and yeah, so that actually saves on fuel
yeah,
consumption. Wow, okay, I didn't even
yeah, and like that design is inspired by nature.
right.
So like in eagles we see that the winglets. So that's I would say biomimicry.
Biomimicry, yeah.
Yeah, so we it's a design inspired by nature.
And I think yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that point because a lot of science is actually, I don't know if we can stamp it with biomimicry, but it does inspire itself from
Absolutely.
biology. Like I was at my physical therapist about a year ago, and he was telling me about how like just traffic. it's like blood vessels, right, where you have all these different red blood cells and different um, substances within or compounds within the bloodstream, and like everything is navigating at a certain speed, and it's kind of the same thing with just the highway and road construction, that kind of thing. Like when you have construction's kind of like blockage by adipose tissue, or not adipose tissue, but uh, like let's say LDL or HDL cholesterol, right? Just fats blocking the blood vessels. So yeah, in that sense, like I want to know more examples. Like, do you have other biomimicry examples in the aircraft? Because an airplane's a bird,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Like it's inspired from a bird.
right,
That's true. So, if you want some other examples, so we have the chevron nozzles.
right,
So in which you have like I would say a zigzag shape at the end of the engine cover. So that's for noise reduction. As you must have seen in owls, we have their wings which have, I would say, those pointed edges.
yeah,
So as you might see, the owl, it flies very silently.
yeah, it does. It's
So,
not too high though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where that inspiration comes from, that chevron
Mhm.
nozzle. So we want to reduce the noise from the engine. So that's the reason to have those, I would say, those pointy edges at the end of the nozzle. So
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
one example.
Right. Wow. Okay. So that's. I mean, it's interesting because I'm learning a lot just by understanding like how different things are inspired. I'm pretty sure like in future designs they're also going to start incorporating a whole bunch of different
Exactly.
aspects in the airplane, because I think I have an eye for aesthetics, and just like when I go back to your 3MT, that that triangular shaped how do you even call that plane? Like I don't even
It's
know.
a blended wing
It,
body.
it's a blended wing body, right? That whole plane, like it really caught the eye, but I didn't realize how dangerous it was until you actually explained it very eloquently. So yeah, let's go back to the 3MT actually, because I think that was a very that's basically where you competed and you had to defend your thesis. Um, what motivated you to participate in 3MT?
Like the motivation was to basically, like, first of all, learn a lot because I'm very not so good at public speaking, I feel. And yeah, to come out of my comfort zone, but at the same time getting this opportunity to share what I'm doing. Because yeah, like it's mostly, I would say, it's a challenge to explain what you're doing in your say in your cocoon,
Right,
and
it
just
is a
come out of
cocoon.
that and say that, okay, so this is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
And during this process, like, I felt that there was a lot of learning, like besides developing my communication skills, there was a lot of learning in understanding why, and like questioning myself, that why is it important, like
yeah.
finding that reason to do what I'm doing. So it was a good reflection point, I would say, to reflect, like, why is it relevant.
Hmm.
And yeah, like, though I knew it is relevant, but then making the direct link, so it was a very good opportunity to do that. And yeah, but my main focus was to, like, come out of my comfort zone,
Right.
share it, and the sharing part was also going to say.
And it's interesting because you did mention public speaking, and a lot of people have stage fright and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I've never like I've always been a clown my whole life, so I've never really had any fear of public speaking. Like on the contrary, I feel like I really thrive in that particular
Mm-hmm.
capacity. It's just the way I look at myself when I rewatch the 3MT, whether
Yeah.
winning or not is not important, but the way that I performed, I felt like it was up to what I was expecting, but at the same time, I'm a big perfectionist. Like I
Mm-hmm.
really like perfecting everything, and I did mention like afterwards. During the
Yes.
deliberation, I went and I mentioned that I was practicing in my car because I drive around and do marketing and tutoring as side jobs to make
Mm-hmm.
pocket money, and just anyways, looking around. Yeah, so like like I really, even though I know that I have a knack for this, I felt like I needed to fine tune and refine and just crop out all the imperfections, not all these different types of things. So I did invest a lot of my time like practicing and doing it. Did you feel like you had a lot of preparation to do, like for 3MT?
Yes, definitely. I
Yeah.
would say I had to do a lot of preparation. Like, firstly, like framing it, and then practicing, like, how do I like put life into those words was something which I had to work on a lot. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of work, I would agree. And because it comes naturally to some, but for some it takes a little effort.
Right.
So yeah, I would say that definitely took a lot of effort.
And and the thing is, it's kind of a reciprocal question. Even though I just asked you like if it takes a lot, it does take a lot of effort. Like that, even for folks that are good at improvisation, it's the fact that you have to take all these different elements, not only translate them into layman's terms, but at the same time convince judges that you have a well constructed um, description within a very limited time frame. Because
Exactly.
3 minutes is not a lot of time.
Absolutely.
Like it's extremely short. It's rapid fire, and having to basically narrow it down for them to understand your work.
Exactly.
I think that's very commendable, especially in
Absolutely.
engineering, because the jargon. I mean, in theology we have a lot of jargon as well. Like all these books are filled with jargon that most people would not understand. But like even in engineering and coming from the sciences, because I did biochemistry, like having to um, translate certain words into layman's terms, that must have been a challenge. That was a challenge. Uh, do you know like maybe two or three words that you had to think, okay, well, you know what, I'm not going to say that word, even though it's very useful for my research, but I'm going to say something else. And what would have been that other replacement?
So that's a good question. Like there have been many such words. So for example, one of the words which I started with, but then I completely dropped it, was the parametric modeling.
Parametric modeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's I tried to explain it that okay, if we know certain parameters, we'll use them to make the model.
Yeah.
But they can be changed depending on this. But it was very difficult, so I ended up dropping that.
I'm so sorry if I'm making you redo your 3MT all over again on the
No, no,
podcast.
no.
Maybe we're talking about it because like we're just reminiscing on a
Yes.
nice event.
Yeah.
So parametric modeling.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
parametric modeling, and then like in very technical terms, like the rotor bursts, which I'm talking about, I ended up like it's in a very technical terms, it's called uncontained engine rotor failure.
Right.
So that itself would have taken, I would say, a couple of seconds. So I dropped it. I was saying rotor burst,
There you go.
but then that was also very hard to understand. So I ended up calling it engine burst.
Engine. Okay, yeah, engine burst.
So,
Like we know what an engine is,
yeah,
and we know what a
that
burst
something
looks
is
like.
bursting.
There you go.
So, but yeah, I was still not sure whether like it would be taken the same way as I see it, because to me, I've been working on it, so I've basically internalized it. But it's very difficult to put that idea across. Okay, what I'm talking about is that suddenly the engine fragments would come out,
right,
and they will spread around and like they pierce through the fuselage or something.
You know, if had your slide been the actual burst or the occurrence of whatever system failure might have happened, I think a lot of people say an image was worth 1,000 words, right? So I mean that could have been that would have probably saved you a lot of time just on, but at the same time you were able to narrow it down, which is great. But let's say had you not been able to narrow it down, like one image would have probably been quite the it would have brought shock value, of course, but it would have explained the whole process, I think.
Yeah. Like I tried to pull in the models which I make and put it on the slide, but somehow it was not like since we went through many iteration and discussion with the mentors as well, so it was like not as attractive as I said that the crazy design was.
Right.
Because it's not just one thing which I was focusing on. Like out of many other things which we do, it was one part of it, and I just didn't want to put complete focus on that. That okay, this is what all I'm doing,
right,
but rather focusing on the safety as a whole and why is it of concern for the designs, the unconventional designs.
And I think making that choice was 100% to your advantage, because like it within an MA a 2 year to 3 year MA research or MA master's research, there are a lot of different chapters and compartments that go into writing a thesis or doing a project, and I kind of had the same approach where I had to pick two things which were the theoretical, like in my case it's the theology presentation, so I had to talk about eschatology, and eschatology had to, like, everybody now knows what eschatology is, because
Yeah.
I really forced it onto my audience to know that it's the study of end times.
Yeah.
So connecting like a theological datum with society as a whole, like the political landscape. Everything in between, I had to like pretty much ditch out, because there are a lot of hoops and um, stations
Yeah.
that come, that are placed in between what happens on an abstract level and how it translates onto society.
Exactly.
So within 3 minutes, I really had to, like, on my end, in my experience, I had to like think about, okay, well, there's a ton of things I have to ditch out, and I'm going to be focusing on the main headline of my research and the most pertinent thing for my audience, right? And to be perfectly honest, like, when I rewatched myself, and then when I had other people rewatch my 3MT to get their feedback, I felt like I spoke too fast. Maybe I do speak too fast as well, naturally, for the audience to capture. But at the same time, I think I finished at 258 or something, very tight, 255. So, you know, yeah, like, in a nutshell, I think that the 3MT challenge was, I found it a lot of fun going to these meetings, and I even went to different people's coaching sessions to see like how they're getting coached. Like I went to Ria's session, just to watch, and in the end, I realized that um, it's more for the experience, and the experience in of itself, to judge, pick and choose, like,
Exactly.
what we're gonna sort out of our thesis
Absolutely.
and present. I think that's the beauty of it, because it really allows us that freedom to
Exactly.
to show the audience, hey, look, like, I'm not going to present everything, but here's what I have to cater,
Absolutely.
right? So yeah, afterwards, and I didn't really connect. Did you keep in touch with anybody from 3MT afterwards, like
Yes.
Javier, Maxine, and
Yeah, like since
Arsenio?
I'm a grad pro skill host,
Yep,
so I stay connected with everybody.
that's good. Okay, so
Yeah.
what do you host?
I host different workshops which are offered by grad pro skills,
Right.
and Maxine, Arsenio, Keenan, they're all facilitators or workshop leaders, I would say, and Javier as well. So they keep on hosting workshops for graduate students. A grad pro skill promotion here.
Right.
So yeah.
Go sign up.
Yeah. So the workshops are free for the students, and I help the facilitators in like setting up the workshop and having the things ready for the students, taking attendance and all that stuff. So, but to me, it's a golden opportunity because I get to attend different workshops,
Right.
and
You get to,
yeah,
so which one are you in charge of?
like not specific one. Like we have many different workshops throughout the semester.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, like one host can be assigned to multiple workshops.
Yeah, so I remember, because I knew of Keenan and Arsenio and Javier before taking 3MT, because exactly last year, like around April, May, June, I was taking, like, I was just loading up on workshops. I was in my first year of doing my master's. Now I'm finishing up my master's, just finished my 2 years. And I remember taking a whole ton of grad pro skills where I was just loading up my planner, putting them on my agenda, just knowing that I was going to take. I took the Zotero one, the public speaking with Javier. I think there was one about writing articles online, predatory journals, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, so I think these opportunities are pretty cool. But one thing that I would suggest for grad pro skills is, I feel like they're kind of in their silo when it comes to grad students, because their talent and the skills that they're teaching could really apply well for undergrads as well. And I didn't really have that knowledge when I was an undergrad, because I didn't know of grad pro skills. I mean, there could be like an undergrad pro skills.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, there is.
There
Okay.
is an undergrad pro skill. Like there are certain workshops offered by Future Bound, like, and the Student Success Center. So they do offer workshops for the undergraduate students. But yeah, like some of the workshops which are specific for research,
Right.
they might not be like that prominent in the undergraduate grad pro skills. So yeah, but that's a very good suggestion. Like I've had the suggestion from other students also, which I talked to, because they might be interested in research, and if they know what tools they have to their aid, for example, say how it is done, so that could be helpful in encouraging undergrad students to take up graduate research studies.
I mean, yes, especially like honor students doing
Absolutely.
their undergrad, but taking the honor. I didn't do honors. I did I did more specialization
Mm-hmm.
courses. I
Mm-hmm.
did biochemistry specialization, and it was we had a choice either we do honors and one of the specialization courses. Actually, we had 8 specialization courses, but that eighth one, it's either we took honors and that eighth one, or we took the seventh and the eighth. I took a seventh and an eighth specialization course. I didn't do honors. But yeah, like honors is a
Like, yeah.
nice introductory segue
Mm-hmm.
into grad school, and especially for research.
Yeah.
Um, so, if there are undergrad uh, workshops or
Mm-hmm.
future bound, for example, that cater to that kind
Yes.
of honors clientele,
Yes.
that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion.
Right.
Right.
But I'm guessing you already have that, don't you?
Yeah, like we have tried to, but the thing is that it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
But like having this, especially like for the honors clientele, as you emphasize,
Right.
so that could be something which should be very interesting.
Yeah, we can, and I'd be glad to be a facilitator as well. I mean, the thing is, my plate's pretty full with Concordia implications. Like, I do a lot of recruiting for SAGEPs for theology, and I'm also a TA, so I correct a lot of assignments
Yeah.
in the theology department. But like, I try to keep myself busy and to take on challenges and get myself uncomfortable, as you mentioned. Like, I think it's something that people have to learn. How to be uncomfortable, especially with 3MT, public speaking, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um, being uncomfortable does allow someone to grow. I'm a big
Absolutely.
believer in that.
Absolutely.
But like, are you comfortable in Montreal?
I
Let's talk about that.
yeah, I'm comfortable. So I seem to love the city now, and yeah, like it's very pleasant. Like summer is amazing.
Yeah,
They
summer
have
here.
a bunch of festivals. So yeah, so I love the city.
Yeah, I'm also like I'm guessing you're from India, right?
Yeah, I'm from India.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend not to know because we had this conversation a couple of minutes ago. So you say yes. You're from New. I'm also not even from Montreal. I'm from Toronto, actually. I came here when I was like 6 years old, and I did my studies in French here because I had to go through the French system. Most of the schooling here is French. There are like a multitude of English schools, but most of the schools are French. So I did my elementary, high school, and CEGEP in French. But then I came to Concordia, and I knew I wanted to come here. So I did Concordia and McGill, bounced back and forth and back here. So you were in. Did you do your undergrad in New Delhi?
Yeah.
In India. Okay. And how does that like translate, compare, contrast like between life in New Delhi and studying in New Delhi versus the student life here at in Montreal?
So what I feel is that definitely like the culture is different, and like the teaching, I feel that maybe it's the grad program, so it's more practical. But the undergrad, if I talk about the academic part, it's it's mostly the same, like the structure of the program, etc. It's the same. But the more interesting part which I found here was the big capstone project which the students have, and wherein they get to apply all what they learn in their undergrad into that final project. So that was interesting. And the other interesting aspect was the co-op, where you get the opportunity to work in the industry every summer or say whichever semester is your work term. So that was very interesting, and I feel that yeah, like that's something plus for here for doing an undergrad here, and yeah, but the grad experience is very different, I would say, and it's amazing since we get to like go beyond what's already done to see and explore the future avenues. So yeah, that's the best part of the grad life, I would say. If I understand and answer your question properly. I don't know if I.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, absolutely, you did. But so did you? Okay, so you went through undergrad in India.
Yeah.
Did you also do like a master's there? And
No.
Okay, so your first master's is what you're doing now. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, so you did mention co-op. So I'm guessing in India, do they not emphasize co-op that much, or?
It's like they do encourage internships and like encouraging students to work on projects in collaboration with the industry and all that. But the thing is that it's not given a name or a proper structure.
Right.
Like it's up to the students that they have to search for internships and then go every summer and then do that internship.
Gotcha, yeah.
But here, like it's imbibed in the program itself. So you have if you enroll in the co-op institute, you have the support which they guide you on how to prepare for such, because a person who is in the student in the first year, he or she might know where to do or how to do all this.
Right.
It's like something very new. So that's where the support system here is very good. And then they also have the job posting in the co-op institute, where they link with different companies and they bring those internships here at Concordia so that students can enroll in them.
Hmm.
So that's something which is amazing here.
I agree. I mean, a huge advantage to have that foundation or infrastructure to hold the student by the hand basically and try to guide
Yeah,
them through like the co-op system and give them a particular time frame and structure to know like when they're going to do their internships and with who or what
yeah.
company or to give them the best experience possible for them to actually deem it worthy to know like if it does is this really what I want to do like if
Yeah,
does
exactly.
and essentially I waited a long time during my undergrad to actually have an internship and I think I had an accidental internship actually because I was supposed to finish in 2017. Then I had a very bad year between like 2016 and 2017, so I took that opportunity knowing that I was going to have to retake some failed courses to take a summer internship in summer of 2017, and it allowed me to really look at how not only the science that we learn is encapsulated and performed in a laboratory setting or in a practical sense, but it also gave me an outlook as to the uh, corporate or industrial environment that comes with what we're learning because a lot of scientists, unfortunately, like scientists and engineers, don't necessarily have the business acumen to
Exactly.
understand the industry because the real life um, concrete reality is that you're going out and you're probably going to work for a business, and even the hospital setting where you have doctors, in and of itself, like I would be reticent to call it a business, but it operates like an organization and a business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to remember where I was going with this. Yeah. So okay. So basically, we're talking about the co-op program. I think that's a nice way to accompany students and not let them go out and on their
Yeah.
own to find internships, despite the fact that autonomy should be cultivated to a certain extent. I think
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah. That's important.
right. Now, were stages or internships mandatory back in India? Because I know here, I think they are
Yeah, like
in
they
engineering school.
they aren't mandatory, but they're very valuable if
Right.
they're on your resume.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like since now students back there, they are realizing that okay, it's very important not only to look good on a resume, but for me to, as you said, understand whether I really want to do this or
Hmm.
not, and understand the associated like the business aspects. So that's a good opportunity to do that. So that's why students are feeling motivated and they're looking for internships and trying to space that out in their uh, academic program.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's a very favorable approach
Mm-hmm.
to taking on academic studies and not only that, not only focusing on school and academics, but
Mm.
also having an eyeball on what the industry has to offer
Yes,
afterwards
yes,
for post graduation. Um, so yeah, I see that the co-op really helps in that sense, and I really wanted to look at the more the cultural aspect now, like the more the comparative aspect when Montreal, you said it's wonderful here in the summer. We have a lot of festivities, and I was talking to one of the professors here about like having these tour guides,
mm-hmm.
like just to have people walk around and see like the different cultures, and like obviously the Catholic Church has a lot of history here in Montreal. um, I have never been to New Delhi,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a big fan of traveling. I've been to, Asian countries like Thailand. I've been to Europe a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about New Delhi. Like how was your upbringing and like who was Parush Bamrah before coming to Montreal and now like in Montreal?
um, so I would say like essentially I'm the same person.
Right, that's good
So
because I'm a big fan of culture, so I want to know like
mhm.
your cultural
Yeah.
appeal.
So like Delhi is a very, I would say, the most wonderful place for me. I love it
Right.
because there's a very, I would say, unique blend of different cultures and different religions. So we have like it's a very like I would say a diverse city where we have people from different religion, and so what I feel is that that environment which I grew up in, it helped me be very open-minded and very welcoming to people from different cultures and religion, and I feel that that's something which I have carried along, and it has helped me have a very good perspective of, and I would say respect for other people from different like ethnic origin or all that. So yeah, so I feel that that was the best, I would say, the learning which I had there. And besides, if I talk about the city, so it's a, as I said, it's a very unique blend not only of the religion and different religions and people from different cultures, but it's also the crazy balance between the new and old.
Right.
So you have the old architecture, which is like with bricks and stone, with those besides the glass buildings, the skyscrapers. So it's a very, I would say, a crazy melange
Yeah.
of all the things which are happening, the the food of the city, the festivities and everything. So it's, yeah, so it's the best city for me.
And I
to
just thought
be,
about Aristophanes' presentation about because he's doing
yeah,
architecture.
yes,
You
I
remember
remember.
he defended his 3MT. Sorry, yeah, his he presented his PhD thesis
Yes,
within the 3MT, and he focused a lot on Montreal architecture
yeah,
and the sense of Montreality
yes,
in the whole mixture, like, or
mm-hmm.
melange, as you mentioned, like when you have the new with the old, the
Yeah,
glass tall skyscrapers with perhaps like older granite
yeah,
concrete buildings.
mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're not made out of concrete, but like what was it called? How do you make a what's that substance that that old buildings were made out of? It's not granite. It's
Like you have like
um,
stone and
yeah, stone and
then
cobbles and that kind of thing. So yeah, like in terms of the appeal for tourism
mm-hmm.
and the way that New Delhi has that blended approach, um, well, what would be like your fondest memories of just living in Delhi, like when you compare and contrast with like Montreal, and because Montreal also has like its wonderful blend, and a lot of Americans come here and say that, hey,
Yeah,
like this doesn't look like an American city. It looks like a European
mm-hmm.
city with all its rich heritage. So like I'm very curious about New Delhi's heritage, like in
Mm-hmm.
terms of Indian culture.
Yeah, so since it's the capital city and it has been a power center for different regimes, I would say. Like we have the Mughals before Britishers, and
Right.
before that we had the I would say the, like it was initially called Indraprasth, like the more linked to Hinduism, I would
Right.
say.
Yeah.
So we have had different set of rulers. So they have all left their mark there. So we have the Connaught Place, like the Lutyens Delhi, which was designed by the British.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the British architecture, and it is being complemented with the Red Fort, which was built by the Mughals. So we have that architecture as well, and plus the architectural remains left by the the Hindu emperors. So we have the uh, old fort, so which is older than all of the current ones, like the Britishers, whatever the Britishers left, and the Mughals. So we have the old fort. So we have, you can see all the different, I would say, the time stamps.
Right. Yeah.
So
Everybody left their mark
everybody
at a
left their
different
mark,
time. Yeah.
and then we have the different temples. So there are, like we have the world's largest mosque, the Jama Masjid there, like, and then we have in Delhi, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have very old temples from, like, say, the Jainism, which is also religion,
Right. Yeah.
and then we have, and there's a very interesting place like in Delhi that which is called the Old Delhi. It's Chandni Chowk, where you have all of them in a line. We have a church,
That's
then
great.
we have a Jain temple, then we have a Hindu temple, and then we have a Sikh temple. They're all in one line,
So if you
and then we
just
have a
drive down the
mosque. Yeah,
Boulevard, you can visit all
and
of them.
they're all very old.
Really.
So Like I feel that that's the most wonderful place where you see that blend happening, and yeah,
What's that spot called?
that's Chandni Chowk.
Jani John.
Chandni Chowk.
Chani John.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you the address.
Yeah,
So, but
I
it's
will check
pretty
it out. Yeah.
busy. It's super populated, and the architecture is super old now. They're obviously trying to refurbish everything, but it is super old, and the food there is amazing. You'll get like the street food of Delhi. It's my favorite thing.
That's yeah. I mean,
So
I think that's a very I'm not sure if it's an Asian thing, but I noticed that a lot of Asian countries, like when I went to Thailand, Asian food's bit like anywhere you go, there are kiosks with
yeah.
just like a floating one kiosk had well, all these kiosks have their street foods, and
Mm-hmm.
every kiosk has their own particular dish. And one particular kiosk that I'll never forget
Mm-hmm.
was a skinned alligator in between
Oh.
like it was just it was smacked between two grids, and the grids were held onto the kiosk, so
Mm-hmm.
it was just like floating there in between those two
Ah.
grids. And it was like the thing is like when you skin an alligator, apparently it's white. It has white skin or white flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember tasting alligator. It was delicious. Like it was just, and I should have spent more money eating alligator, but because I was a bit reticent. Like I'm not sure what I'm getting into here. Like some people were handing out like scorpions and that kind of. I did not try scorpions or anything because I was there for a week. I didn't want to ruin my vacations, and I was on my own in Thailand at the other end of the world. So yeah, I had that slice of alligator. It was pretty good. I mean, it tasted like chicken, and it was good. So yeah, so street food is big
Yeah.
in New Delhi. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I know Indian cuisine is also something that's super interesting.
Exactly.
Have you ever been to Mumbai?
Oh, no.
I've never been to Mumbai. Okay. Because I've seen a picture of Mumbai like online. Because if I wanted to go to Nepal, I know Nepal is one of my top three countries. Nepal, Japan, and I think Peru. Those are like my top three. And like if I go to Nepal, like the obvious thing would be like Nepal is right next door to India. Like I'll pass by India or something. And so yeah, I was looking at like different excursions where I would be hopping around from like Mumbai to like Delhi and Tamil Nadu and up to Nepal. So a lot of people recognize Mumbai as an international city, and now, but you've never been there, right? So when from a theology perspective, I have to ask about religion. Like, and you mentioned that there are a lot of religions in Delhi. What would be like the main standout religions that you may recall, like in Delhi, for example, or just in India in general?
Like that's a very difficult question because to be very honest, like uh, to give an example, say in my class, I had a friend who was a Muslim and a friend who was Christian,
Right.
a friend who is a Buddhist, a Jainism,
Right.
a follower of Jainism, and I follow Sikhism, then Hinduism. So like I cannot say that there is one standout religion because the diversity is amazing.
Yeah.
And I have had I would say an opportunity to have friends and interact with them and know about their religion. So yeah, so I feel that it's amazing. And even within a particular religion, for example in Hinduism, we have many different gods. So yeah, from region to region it will vary. Like some people, for example in Calcutta, they worship the female goddess Durga more. And then when we go down south, we have like people worshipping like Venkatesh, which they call. And then like basically there are different forms, like from different region to region. And then in Mumbai, as you say, which is in Maharashtra,
Right.
so it's Ganesha, which is like the god with the elephant head. So
So that's
it's
not Vishnu. It's not the
no.
same. Okay. So I'm not sure. Like,
So yeah, like
familiar.
if we go into that, it's again like there are three main gods, like Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh.
Yeah.
So there's one creator, which is Brahma. Then there is Vishnu, who takes care of the the the, the world, the universe. And then there's the destroyer, the Shiva, who at the end has to destroy everything, and so that everything can maybe start from scratch again. So yeah.
Now, so you practice Sikhism, right?
Yeah.
So Um, are there similarities with Islam or with Hinduism, or like how would you define Sikhism as a religion? Because I'm not too
Mm.
familiar, other than
Yeah.
Jagmeet Singh being Sikh. But, he's the head of the NDP.
Yeah.
So yeah, how would like tell us more about.
So in Sikhism, we believe that the God is one.
Mhm.
It's like formless.
So it's a monotheistic religion, right? There's like one God. Is it?
Yeah, like, and like there's one God, but like there's no form to that God.
Right.
It's like it's formless, omnipresent, and like it's not associated to one identity, or there's no one name to that, but it's basically the energy which surrounds us. So that's about Sikhism. And in Sikhism, it's basically, as you talked about, the connections with different religions. So there are teachings from different religions, like from Hinduism, from Islam as well. So for us, like we we worship the holy book, which is called Guru Granth Sahib.
Guru Granth Sahib. Okay.
Yeah. So the teachings from different religions are in there. So that's what we are supposed to follow. So like that's the, I would say, the supreme command
Mm-hmm.
to follow that. And the main the main, I would say, learning for me is that you should be sincere in your doing, and learn to give back. And yeah, and then there's also one thing which is very different, is that it focuses on the inner strength, and that to like, if like if you're being oppressed and you are like just giving into it, and you're not, like, I would say, hitting back,
Right.
so that's also a crime on your part, like, as
in,
for
if I do hit back.
now, if you don't,
If I don't hit back. Okay.
yeah, if you're uh, say, if you're just accepting what is being done wrong to you, so, and if you are seeing, say, somebody doing wrong to somebody else, and you're not acting on it,
Mm-hmm.
so that's like, that's not good, like, it's, I would say,
A sin.
a sin.
Yeah,
Exactly, that's the right
to
word.
take it from
Yeah,
my religion of Christianity. But okay, so that's interesting. So yeah, so there is that. Um, how could I say, like a missionary element to it, or not a missionary? What word can we associate with that? A proactive step
Yeah.
to yeah, like if somebody's getting hurt and nobody interferes. Because
Yeah.
I mean, you might have noticed here, like in North America, we're very individualistic, which is a fancy word to say selfish. I mean, I'm not talking for everybody, like, but if I think that just in the ethos of North American culture, there is that um, notion of self-preservation and self-fulfillment, self-actualization. And I was like, I did 3 tutoring sessions yesterday. I was driving around in my car from one tutoring session to the next, and I started thinking about these things, like the Maslow's pyramid of the needs. And what really disappointed me when I thought about it from this angle was that when you look at Maslow's pyramid, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Maslow. It's like it's a North American concept of that a psychologist, Albert Maslow, I think it's Albert his name. He designed this pyramid of the needs where the fulfillment of the human person actually has different stages. Where the basic stage is physiological, like eating food, making sure that you're healthy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have the security aspect, making sure that your surrounding is safe, like you don't walk around at night at 1 a.m. in a close corner because there might be dangerous people and that kind of thing. And then you have like a belongingness, which is having a social circle, social life, family, that kind of thing. The fourth level is ego, like, and that's where it starts to get like in the prestige part, where it's like ego and feeling that you've achieved. I always got the fourth one wrong. I think it's ego as in being at a high level of achievement. And then self-actualization is kind of controversial because like as a Christian, I believe that self-actualization is doing God's will, right? And doing something that goes beyond the self, you know. But a lot of people, like from secular or an individualistic standpoint, people start thinking, well, self-actualization is basically the highest tip point of my own happiness, or my own bonheur in French they would say. But then again, like from a philosophical point of view, people have to define like what exactly is happiness. Like, am I going to be fulfilled if I become the best engineer possible, right? If I'm gonna redesign aircraft safety, and like how can I use that
Yeah.
in terms of my happiness?
Mm-hmm.
But that again, that's a North American mindset, which
Mm-hmm.
just by traveling around, like in Europe when I went to Poland and Italy and Spain and France, and even in Asia when I went to like the Middle East and to Thailand, I started realizing that not everybody thinks in a North American way,
Yeah.
right? So, and obviously I'm going to have that culture shock if I go to, or when I go to New Delhi or in India, or if I go to Kerala or Bangkok, not Bangkok, sorry, Bombay,
Yeah.
Mumbai. So, all that to say that, I think it's very important. Like, and I went from the point that you have to do something and interfere if there's oppression going on, and I think that's something that's super important. Is there any other tenet about Sikhism that I should take note of, like in the lifestyle? Like, I know in Christianity there's like love thy neighbor, like love your enemies, like, and that basically, from our Christian angle, we look at it as like if somebody's is doing something bad, we shouldn't I shouldn't go beat that person up. I should probably just find a loving approach to educate that
Yeah.
person on doing the right
Yeah.
thing. I'm wondering if Sikhism also has elements like that.
Yeah, like I don't know if I would be able to convey that in a very good way because, like, to me, it's like my parents, like, in every religion, we have different people who follow it in a different way.
Right.
So, like, what I've learned from my parents is that uh, what they told me about Sikhism is that it's about an honest living,
Mm-hmm.
it's about sincerity, and then it's about not just focusing on yourself, but on a community as a whole.
Right.
So that's one thing. And then, yeah, I feel I'm not a very good promoter, but
It's all right. It's all right. Well, I mean, it does answer a
so
lot
yeah,
of
it's
questions.
yeah, and the emphasis that your relationship with the divine is very personal.
Mm-hmm.
So you needn't follow a particular format that if you do this, you do that, then he's happy and all that. So like, but that finding that connect which you have, so like that could be in any way. Like you needn't sit at a particular time in the day and close your eyes and you start praying and then you get that connect. So finding the connect, it's a person's own responsibility.
Right.
And yeah, like uniting your spiritual self with the one.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, you must, I would say, be sincere in your doing. That I'm keeping on repeating that. So yeah, that's my main takeaway. And as for a tenant, I cannot give you some because yeah.
But I think you did answer the question. Being sincere and living in a communal sense.
Yeah.
I think in and of itself it does answer the
Mm-hmm.
question of what exactly some tenets of Sikhism might be. And
Yeah.
um, I actually, when I think of it, I don't think I have any Sikh friends because I didn't have the chance to, uh, connect or have dialogue with people from the Sikh religion. You're probably the first person from the. Well, I have like perhaps over the counter spoken to someone who had like a turban or something, and I know in Quebec, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is that aesthetic where like some guys wear the turban, right, in Sikhism, and I think in Quebec we had like years ago, maybe a decade ago, an accommodation. It's called like an accommodation where I think the kirpan was allowed to be worn.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was the very first accommodation that we did for religious minorities, right? Because, and again, that was a decade ago, so it wasn't as multicultural as it is today. It was already multicultural, but not to today's level. So yeah, the Sikhs actually had the very first accommodation when it came to religious flexibility. And I know like nowadays, like there are a lot of talks for Muslim women wearing the hijab or the niqab or whatever it's called in hospitals, because a lot of them are nurses, right? And like, do we keep it on? Do we keep it off? Like, there's a lot of like these debates, and in theology, we do wrestle with a lot of these questions because we think about, okay, well, there are fundamental human rights, like everybody has to have their own religion and practice it in their own free way, but when it comes to like actual health or sanitation matters, we start thinking, okay, well, what decisions are best to be made in that sense. Um, not necessarily to dive into that field particularly, but I have had a conversation recently with a Muslim fellow
Mm-hmm.
because I grew up with Muslims, and
Yeah.
I'm more familiar with Islam
Mm-hmm.
and Judaism a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. Um, I'm wondering if, like, so you did say that Islam does incorporate some of its teachings into Sikhism. What would be like the main point of similarity with Islam? Is,
Main point of
yeah,
similarity.
because I mean, like to answer, well, for us Christians, like we think we have the Bible, and a lot of the Bible actually is found in the Quran.
Okay.
So, but in terms of Sikhism, I'm wondering if there are like common denominators
Mm-hmm.
that you might have with the Muslim religion.
I'm thinking.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, take your time. I mean, it is hard to find because it's such an elusive
Yes.
thing, So
Yeah, so that is difficult because yeah, I am a religious person,
right,
but not with all the like the facts and the figures. I would say
okay.
so. Yeah, that would be a hard question for me to answer right now.
But I just you know what I just remembered something. Because you mentioned like the one,
Yeah.
right? I think that adherence to the one. I think that's something that Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Sikhs
Mm-hmm.
also have because before this conversation, what I did know about Sikhism is that they had a monotheistic approach to life, and I would even consider Sikhism one of the I wouldn't say Abrahamic religions, but one of the monotheistic faiths because contrary to Buddhism and Hinduism, I feel like the Sikhism has a concentration on one deity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Compared to, for example, what I saw in Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
every like kind of like in Hinduism, every temple seemed to worship Buddha,
Yeah.
but you'd have multiple deities as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And different, and I remember like at the Multi Faith and Spirituality Center
Yeah.
at Concordia. I'm pretty sure you're familiar
Yeah.
with them. I spoke to one of the religion professors who was a white lady, a white North American lady, who has a PhD in religion, teaches religion, and she had to explain Hinduism to me because from a Christian point of view, it's we have different denominations, but pretty much every denomination has like if your family is Baptist or Catholic,
Yeah.
we all believe in the same thing.
Okay.
If I grew up Catholic, I'm more of an overarching Christian
Mm-hmm.
now. As a Catholic, we all believe in the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But within a Hindu family, the
Yeah.
father, the mother, the son, the daughter, everything can believe in Hinduism in their own specific way,
Yeah.
which is kind of taboo in Christianity because um, we don't necessarily divide or split things up that way, and I found that to be quite interesting
Yeah.
in Hinduism and Hindu culture.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like just to shift gears a little bit because we talked about Sikhism, we talked about aircraft. I'd like to know about like Parush Bamrah's future. Like
Mm-hmm.
right now, you're completing your MA. Do you want to do a PhD? Do you want to go into industry? Like, what does the future hold for you?
Yeah, like I would like to go to the industry first.
Right.
So as to dive deep and see how things are being done, and yeah, I would like to do a PhD, but sometime later, when I have an actual why to do a PhD.
Right.
So I have the problem at hand,
That's
and
good.
which drives me during those like 4 years or 5 years of PhD. So yeah, to be a motivation factor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, first I will focus on finding my why, and then go for a PhD maybe.
I think you're very close to finding your why. Like just from the way you pitched it for 3MT, and you seem to be very cognizant about just the whole your particular vein of engineering. I think it's just a matter of time of just knowing when exactly you want to pull the trigger and basically start the PhD. And but I think have you ever you've already worked in industry before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Like as an intern.
Right.
But I've not worked like as a full-time employee.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, so I feel that that's important to have that experience and see how things are being done before we come up with a way to do them.
Right.
So it's important to understand how actually things are happening, how the processes happen.
And do you know
before
like
improving.
and so do you know like where or which companies, like in what town or which companies you want to perhaps like do your internships in? Have you looked into, okay, well, perhaps there's Pratt and Whitney like
Yeah.
down in the South Shore, or Bombardier, which
Yeah,
is
like
huge in
I'm starting
Quebec.
my internship this
Where?
May
Oh
at
yeah,
Bombardier. Yes,
congratulations.
thank you.
That's great. Where are you going?
At Bombardier.
Bombardier en Côte-Vertu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bombardier.
So that's my first step, and then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But definitely in the aerospace industry, and mostly in the domain which I'm focusing on. So yeah, but there's no fixed location, so
That's
I'm pretty
good.
flexible in that.
That's good. Yeah, I
But
mean,
wherever the work is good, I would like to go there. Where the work and the problem is interesting.
right. And but I mean, do you want to stay in Montreal? Do you want to like go back to Delhi? Do you want to go to Toronto? Like, is there like a dream city for you, like for you to work in?
Like so far, I don't think so. I have a dream city because for me, like every place is new. It has its own uniqueness,
Right.
and the life is too short
Right.
to
Yeah.
stick to one. Like first, you need to explore.
For
So
sure.
I'm open to exploring, and yeah, and I feel the world itself is full of adventures, and it's very beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, thing is like for me, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of tourism and exploring the world and that kind of thing. Like, if I could explore the whole world for a year or two, like I would definitely do it. But I would like personally, I don't know if it's because I'm Canadian, grew up in North America. I would stick to North America, perhaps the States. I know there are a couple of towns in the States that might interest me, or even in Alberta and Canada. Like I looked at, for example, Calgary. Apparently Calgary years ago was rated one of the cleanest cities in the world. So, I mean, that might be an interesting place. And they have the lowest sales tax. I think they're 4% compared to 15% here. So, I mean, I think a lot about my wallet. So,
That's very important.
I'm not money obsessed, but I try to be economical, and I think about like,
that's important.
oh yeah, it is.
That's wise.
Yeah. So, to save money, I would definitely like prefer to stay in Alberta and pay like, if I buy a chair, I prefer paying 4% than 50% on a chair, on $100 chair, right? Instead of like $15 extra. But I also looked at like Nashville, Tennessee, and for some reason, like the southern states, they're less populated, and I think they have more land, like in Texas or Tennessee, and a lot of opportunities are booming there because those towns, obviously they're not at the level of New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, but they're still, you know, blossoming cities, and they have massive potential. So I'm looking at those cities, but again, like right now I'm here for master's and PhD and finishing my studies and that kind of thing. Um, I was just wondering where I was going with this because, yeah, so basically we were talking about like internships. My sister did her degree in electrical engineering, and she graduated with her bachelor's last year from Polytechnique, which is an engineering school here. She did an internship at Bombardier, and she really enjoyed it. From what I recall, she really thought it was a very constructive experience for her portfolio. So I no doubt like you're probably gonna enjoy your time there. We hit the hour and a half mark already, and hopefully you found that it was kind of fun. And I don't want to take too much of your time. I always like to end with asking the guests for like their final thoughts. Like if we have like a student audience or even a grown up post educational audience, what would be like final thoughts you'd like to share with them?
Like we started the discussion with 3MT, so closing the loop, I would say that we must get comfortable being uncomfortable. So that would be my key message. So that's when you start to grow, when you push those limits, and yeah, so being comfortable, getting uncomfortable is the key to success.
Which is antithetical when you hear it. Like it does contradict itself. Like being comfortable, getting uncomfortable. But I think developing a habit of knowing, of challenging oneself, even in uncomfortable situations. I think that's an awesome lesson to learn. So yeah, I mean, thanks for that final thought. I think I'll keep that in mind because sometimes I'm very uncomfortable getting uncomfortable. So I'll try to learn how to get uncomfortable more and more. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Chris Dagger right here with Parush Bamrah. I'm not even sure if I'm saying your name correctly. It's good? Yeah. So with Parush Bamrah. So we had someone from outside the program, right? So I think it's very important to have some folks that are outside theological studies, even outside the remote programs like sociology, anthropology, or philosophy, to have like folks from, for instance, mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, to share what they have to say about like their particular academic field. And that's what I'm trying to strive for with Off Bishop Street, is to expand and stretch my arms out into different fields that are not connected necessarily, but that can generate, intellectually stimulating or spiritually stimulating conversations to understand like what their field's all about and how interesting their field actually is. So on that note, guys, we're going to have Dr. Uri Shalev from Israel. He is a psychologist who specializes in drugs and neurological effects of drugs. We're going to have him over at the department on Monday to talk about that. I'm going to try to interrelate, drugs and outer body experiences with perhaps the theological input that may be weaved into it. So yeah, so thank you guys for listening, and see you guys next time. All right, so I'm gonna stop that there. Boom.